Figures with dark legacies, a deeper look. In examining the history of Western civilization, we often find ourselves idolizing figures who have left a significant mark on our world. However, it's crucial to delve deeper into their lives and actions, revealing a more nuanced and sometimes disturbing portrait. This analysis highlights 13 prominent individuals revered in Western culture. P.T. Barnum, showman or exploiter. P.T. Barnum, known as the Greatest Showman, was the architect behind the modern circus and a significant figure in popular entertainment. Although his legacy includes the showcasing of marginalized individuals and freak shows, his practices were deeply exploitative and rooted in ableism. His exhibitions often portrayed marginalized groups, including people with disabilities and those from non-European backgrounds, as curiosities rather than as fellow human beings. Barnum's ventures thrived on sensationalism and racial othering, which perpetuated stereotypes and reinforced social hierarchies. This darker side of his career contrasts sharply with the romanticized image presented in contemporary portrayals, such as the 2017 film, The Greatest Showman, which misrepresents his legacy in favor of a more palatable narrative. 3. Florence Nightingale, pioneer or white supremacist. Celebrated as the founder of modern nursing, Florence Nightingale is revered for her groundbreaking work during the Crimean War, where she significantly improved the conditions of military hospitals. However, her legacy is complicated by troubling views on race and class. Nightingale supported brutal colonial policies, believing that the subjugation of indigenous peoples was a necessary means to an end, a perspective rooted in white Christian supremacy. Additionally, Nightingale's adherence to the miasma theory of disease belief in moral and environmental degradation as causes of illness led her to dehumanize marginalized groups, including sex workers. This juxtaposition of her humanitarian efforts with her less favorable views makes her a complex figure in nursing history, an icon whose actions reflect both compassion and prejudice. 4. John A. Macdonald, nation builder or assimilator. The first Prime Minister of Canada, Sir John A. Macdonald, is often credited with laying the foundations of the Canadian Confederation. However, his policies towards Indigenous peoples sparked major controversies. Macdonald was instrumental in implementing the Indian Act of 1876, designed to assimilate Indigenous peoples and erase their cultures. His government forcibly displaced over 150,000 Indigenous children into residential schools, where they experienced systemic abuse and loss of identity, actions that continue to reverberate in Indigenous communities today. Moreover, Macdonald's racist attitudes extended to non-European immigrants, including a targeted head tax aimed at Chinese immigrants, designed to deter their arrival in Canada. Many Canadian citizens today grapple with Macdonald's troubling legacy, which complicates their national identity and commemorative practices. 5. Henry Ford, innovator or promoter of hate. Henry Ford is a household name known for revolutionizing the automobile industry with mass production techniques and for his advocacy for worker wages. However, his legacy is further compounded by his disturbing anti-Semitic sentiments. Ford published a series of articles through his newspaper, the Dearborn Independent, which spread harmful conspiracy theories about Jewish people. His writings resonated with some in the early 20th century, even attracting the interest of Adolf Hitler, who admired Ford's work and ideology. Ford's fierce opposition to labor unions also left a tarnished reputation. His violent suppression of labor movements, including the notorious Battle of the Overpass, revealed a brutal side to his approach to maintaining control over his workforce. Thus, Ford's legacy intertwines groundbreaking innovation with a disconcerting embrace of bigotry and anti-union violence. 6. Thomas Jefferson, Enlightenment philosopher or slave owner. As a principal architect of American democracy and the author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson is hailed as a champion of individual liberty. However, his life was marred by contradictions, notably his ownership of over 600 slaves throughout his lifetime. Despite his eloquent proclamation that all men are created equal, Jefferson's actions belied his words. He profited immensely from the labor of those he enslaved while simultaneously engaging in practices that upheld systemic racism. Jefferson's writings also revealed feelings of racial superiority, further complicating his legacy. His views on Native Americans spurred policies that led to further unprovoked encroachments on indigenous territories. Evaluating Jefferson's contributions requires acknowledging the broader societal injustices of his time and their lasting impact. 7. Henry Kissinger, diplomat or war criminal. Henry Kissinger, the former U.S. Secretary of State, is a polarizing figure in U.S. foreign policy. While some celebrate him for establishing diplomatic relations with China and engaging in the SALT treaties with the Soviet Union, his involvement in numerous controversial actions during the Vietnam War and Latin American coups casts a long shadow over his legacy. Kissinger was a key architect of the bombing campaigns in Cambodia, leading to extensive civilian casualties and contributing to the destabilization of the region. Kissinger's support for the coup in Chile that overthrew democratically elected President Salvador Allende is regarded as a blatant violation of human rights, resulting in a long period of dictatorship marked by widespread repression. As a figure whose actions led to significant human suffering, Kissinger embodies a legacy of imperialism and ethical dilemmas in international relations. 8. Julius Caesar, conqueror or tyrant. Julius Caesar's name resonates through history, remembered as a military genius and the final dictator of the Roman Republic. His military campaigns expanded Rome's territory but were characterized by extreme violence and bloodshed. Caesar's conquests, particularly in Gaul, resulted in countless deaths, leading many historians to label them as genocidal. Though he initiated remarkable reforms and public works that improved the welfare of Roman citizens, Caesar's unyielding thirst for power led him to appoint himself as dictator for life, stoking fears over tyranny and despotism. The complexities of his achievements and failures illustrate the tension between his accomplishments and the brutal realities of his rule. 9. Mahatma Gandhi, icon or contradictor. Mahatma Gandhi is revered as a symbol of nonviolent resistance in the fight for Indian independence from British rule. His life exemplified the principles of peace, minimalism, and self-reliance. Nevertheless, Gandhi held discriminatory views toward black South Africans, which have recently drawn scrutiny. His writings reflected a belief in white superiority and a reluctance to embrace a truly egalitarian worldview. Gandhi's approach to gender was similarly controversial. Although he is credited with advocating for women's rights, he also espoused traditional views that confined women to domestic roles. His controversial personal practices, including sleeping beside young women to test his resolve, further complicated his legacy. Gandhi's life embodies a duality, an emblem of peace and a figure entangled in contradictions. 10. Thomas Edison, inventor or underminer. Thomas Edison is often credited with revolutionary inventions that shaped the modern world, including the electric light bulb and the phonograph. His rivalry with other inventors, notably Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse, was marked by fierce competition and questionable ethics. Edison's tactics and smear campaigns against the use of alternating current, AC, technology involved cruel demonstrations, including the public electrocution of animals. Edison's business practices reflected poor treatment of employees and aggression towards unionization efforts, showcasing a darker side to his legacy. While he is celebrated as a pioneering inventor, his methods raise ethical questions about the cost of innovation. 11. George Washington, founding father or slaveholder. George Washington is often venerated as the father of the United States and a leader in the American Revolutionary War. However, his legacy is punctuated by his ownership of hundreds of slaves. Despite his philosophical grappling with slavery, Washington's actions, particularly at the time of his death, when nearly 300 enslaved individuals lived at his estate, Mount Vernon, illustrate a complexity in his character. Washington's interactions with Native American tribes were similarly fraught with tension and violence. He supported territorial expansion that led to the displacement of indigenous peoples and employed federal troops against citizen revolts, such as the Whiskey Rebellion, which raised concerns about governmental overreach. Washington's historical significance is intertwined with the contradictory realities of his actions. 12. Mother Teresa, saint or charlatan. Mother Teresa is recognized globally for her humanitarian work through the Missionaries of Charity, which was committed to serving the sick and the poor. Her life of selfless devotion earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979, and she was canonized by the Catholic Church. Yet, her legacy is scrutinized for lacking adequate medical care in her facilities and for prioritizing spiritual preparation over life-saving treatments. Critics have argued that Mother Teresa's views on issues such as abortion and contraception hindered her effectiveness in addressing the root causes of suffering. Additionally, her associations with controversial figures cast a shadow over her legacy. What many consider altruistic dedication merits an examination of the underlying motives and implications of her work. 13. Winston Churchill, hero or imperialist. Winston Churchill is often hailed as a stalwart defender of freedom during World War II, credited with inspiring the British during their darkest hours. Yet, his legacy includes troubling imperialist attitudes that resulted in terrible consequences for colonized nations. The Bengal famine of 1943, coinciding with Churchill's leadership, led to the deaths of millions, yet he is accused of neglecting to provide aid during this humanitarian crisis, believing famine to be a natural outcome of wartime economics. Churchill's views on race were explicit and often discriminatory. His policies, including violence against protesters and concentration camps in colonies, signal a legacy entangled with deep-seated colonialism. Churchill's reputation as a wartime leader is complicated by these historical atrocities, prompting discourse about the heroes we choose to celebrate. Conclusion. The lives and actions of these celebrated figures underscore a critical lesson: history is rarely black and white. While their contributions to society, culture, or politics are immeasurable, the darker aspects of their legacies challenge the notion of unequivocal hero worship. Understanding these complexities offers a richer, albeit more uncomfortable, narrative, one that emphasizes the importance of acknowledging both the light and shadows in our collective heritage. These figures serve as reminders that the past is filled with contradictions, compelling us to engage critically with history. In navigating our understanding of these historical personalities, we continue to define our values and shape the future in mindful and informed ways. It is essential to engage in these discussions, honoring the truth of their actions while recognizing their impact on our present. By fostering a critical lens through which to approach figures from our past, we can better